Hello again, audiophiles. I am Wave Theory, and as you saw in the title of this video and on the thumbnail and all of that, I have another top-of-the-line Summit Phi level headphone review for you today, which is always exciting. So before we get into that, just real quick, please like and subscribe to my channel if you like what I am doing here and you want to get notifications as to when I put new videos up. And also, please be on the lookout for other ways that you can support me and this channel going forward so that I can continue to do fun stuff like this and bring it to you. All right, so the JPS Labs Abyss 1266 TC headphone. Okay, here it is. Now, I teased having this in for review at the end of last week when I posted my Hi-Fi-Man Susvara video, and I'll link to that video down in the description as well. All right, so we will dive into this one today after I've had another good week of listening to it here. So yeah, let's just start with build and all of that. So it's ugly. Okay, it is. It doesn't look like much. It looks to me like a medieval head clamping torture device, like especially because it has like this screw-like thing up top here. It looks like you just put this on. It does look hilarious on the head, but you like put a ratchet up here and you start cranking on it and it just squeezes down and puts your head in a vice, which, okay, you know, all right. It is, though, in a lot of ways, form follows function in its design, though, all right? The only thing that, I mean, since it already is a ridiculous-looking headphone, the only thing I wish JPS Labs would have done aesthetically was just coat the whole thing in a highly reflective chrome. Now, why would you do that? Because then I could sit here and say that the longer you stare into the abyss stares back. Okay? Go ahead and make comments on that joke down in the down below there. Okay, I deserve it. But anyway, moving on. Like, there are reasons why it looks this way. For one thing, this is a headphone that is designed to not have a seal around the ear. Okay, so it sounds best when it is not sealed. So one of the reasons that it has this weird headband structure here with just this strap that supports the weight is because it actually, this joint right here is an expansion joint. And JPS Labs has a video out on how to set this up. And they say in that video that wider is better. Again, because it's supposed to not be sealed, right? And so I think I agree with that. I did notice in time when I had it more closed that it put more pressure on the sides of the head. And so it's a comfort thing, really, to expand it, but then also it just makes sure that you're not sealing with the pads against the side of the head and that sort of thing. So, I mean, that's one reason why it looks this way. Now, when it is on the head, it is supported mostly by this headband strap right there, which for some people, and me a little bit, I think does create a bit of a hot spot right on the top of the head after a while. And again, this is all metal too, and it's got some pretty robust magnets in there. And so there is some weight here. Now, normally, heavy headphones have not bothered me so much. Like, Odysseys have never really bothered me as far as their weight and size goes. My Lawton modded TH900s, those Lawton wooden chambers can be kind of heavy, and those don't bother me. But I did have some comfort issues with mostly the weight on this and the way that it's distributed. Because again, like without the seal, like it loses some of the support with the friction on the sides of the heads too, the sides of the head. And so it puts a little bit more pressure up here and all of that. So yeah, you know, it's a trade-off there on the build because like the way it looks just looks crazy, but it does directly impact the sound because again, they don't want to seal there. And you could tell, like if you push it against your head, like and get a seal, the sound quality does diminish. You lose a lot of bass presence and, you know, and it does change things. So there are other ways to tune this to personal taste, though, and I think this is a really clever design on the part of Abyss headphones here. So the pads, see them here, like the seams of the pads I have in the up position, but this is a really ingenious system here where there's just magnets held on there, holding the pads on. And then you can see that we have these pegs right here that stick out of the side of the speaker housing. And then on the inside of the pad there, we see that there are several notches that fit around those pegs. And there are a lot of them. So you can orient, okay, these pads on this peg system in, you can see, just a number of ways. I haven't actually counted. I don't know the actual number. I did try several orientations. Again, I don't know the exact number, but it was a lot. And you can tell that the sound changes. So does the fit and the comfort. Okay, I eventually landed on seams being directly up, okay, as this here, for both sound and comfort reasons. And so you can kind of see that it's like almost perpendicular to most headphone pad orientations. Like you would normally think that the pad that is like a forward angle type of thing like this would fit, you know, in a traditional headphone would fit seam forward around the ear and seal around like this. But no, I turned it, I will try to show this to you, so that the fat part is like underneath my ear. Okay, and the balance of sound quality being not sealed, okay, kind of broke the seal up top for me. But then it also took the pressure from like around the top half of my ear on the side of the head off. Like, I mean, I wear glasses, obviously, so that helped. But there just was a little bit too much pressure at other pad positions, like somewhere in this area. And so putting the fat part of the pad underneath for a comfort perspective worked best for me. And then also, I had pretty good sound there, but there is a lot of tuning that can happen with that system. It's a really easy, really ingenious system that is well executed there. But it does also make talking about sound a little bit challenging because each position changes the sound a little bit. Okay, so I'm going to do my best to describe the sound as well. Now, I don't think I mentioned it yet, but I'll get there. Like a Summit Fi headphone, $5,000 US is the starting package for this thing. So it's, you know, it's not cheap, and it's definitely up there, you know, in the top of the line area, top of the line arena. And so we will judge it on those merits here shortly when we get to the sound. Now, this loaner set was sent to me by a friend and a friend of the channel. And it did not come with the stock cable or any JPS Labs cables. The friend sent to me with it this DHC Preon 4 cable, which is like a $3,500-ish cable, brand new, I think. So really slummed it with this, so to speak. Now, my understanding is this cable is not the best sonic match to the 1266. Okay, like it still sounds pretty good. All that. I was more blown away by this cable when I used adapters. We'll talk about connections to the 1266 here in a moment, but when I used adapters and plugged it into my $200 Beyerdynamic DT880 600 ohm, I was just completely floored by the difference that this made with that $200 headphone. Seriously, I kid you not, made that $200 headphone sound like a $2,000 headphone. Just transformational. Okay, cables do matter, and at some point I have ideas banging around in my head here about how I can use my science and education background and all of that to try to develop a series as to the role of science and the role of measurements and what our brains are even doing when we listen to music and how cables can affect all of that. Okay, I have an idea for that series, so just be on the lookout for that sometime in the future. I'm not exactly sure how I'm going to do that, but we do need to talk about cables at some point in a serious way. Okay, all right. So on then the subject of cabling, the 1266 has what looks like a standard mini XLR dual input, like an Odyssey system or like a ZMF or a Dan Clark kind of a thing, but not quite. The pin count is different. Like there are only 3 pins in here. So the Mini XLR typically has 4 pins, and so you can't just pick up an Odyssey wire and plug it into this. Okay, you need to be careful with that, just because of the different pin system. Okay, all right. So with all of that, I think we are ready to talk about sound. And then I think it just bears repeating that this is a $5,000 headphone in its cheapest package. There are options for different accessories and cables that drive the package price up from there, but the starting is $5,000. Okay, at least direct from JPS Labs. If you go that way from the Abyss website, which I will link to down below. And then because of the pad positioning, and you can fine-tune the sound with not only the width of the headband, but the positioning of the pads, it can be a bit challenging to say, like, universally, this is what's true about the sound of the 1266. I will say that in the multiple pad positions that I've tried, and I know for sure that I tried seams down, seams perfectly forward, seams at about, let's see, what would it be, 1 o'clock-ish on the left side and 11 o'clock-ish on the right side. Okay, just a few different positions there. I tried others. Those are the ones that I remember, and then, of course, I settled on directly up. Like, one thing that is true is that this headphone leads headphonery, okay, just the context of headphones, to my knowledge, in terms of bass performance, right? Like, it's the amount of bass presence, the extension without drop off, without roll off, in fact, maybe even actually elevates into true deep sub bass. And then to do all of that with the speed and the texture and the slam that it brings, I haven't heard any other headphone come close to this. Okay, in terms of that low bass, just dominance, really. Okay, which might make it sound like this has a really bassy signature. The signature, again, is tricky. Okay, but I mean, that's the thing that stands out. Regardless of pad position, that bass is phenomenal, and it just changes a little bit in presence in terms of where you place the pads. If it's a little too bass heavy for you, then you can turn the pads and decrease it a little bit depending on how you set them up. If it's not bassy enough for you, you can turn the pads and get a little bit more bass presence going on in there. Now, the thing is like with any headphone, you start messing with the pads and you mess with the signature in general. So more often than not, I think most listeners would find the overall signature of the 1266, okay, regardless of pad position, to be a general U shape, okay? Slightly elevated sub bass, a slightly elevated upper treble. For me, and I've discussed my mid-range sensitivity in my Hearing Quirks video, which is my least watched video, but I link to it at the bottom of every video. So I encourage you to watch that to, like, learn about my hearing quirks, at least the ones that I know about and can put into words and all of that. I do seem to have a sensitivity somewhere in the mid-range that makes a lot of things sound shouty or honky or hollow to me, okay, really quickly. I mean, almost like talking through a paper towel tube kind of an effect, okay, a lot of times. And unfortunately for me, this plays with that, okay, in ways that other top-of-the-line headphones have not. Susvara did not bother me at all right there. I teased having another top-of-the-line headphone coming in for review in my Susvara video, and that is this guy, the Focal Utopia. Okay, the Utopia does not do that to me either. Even though several Focal models do, the Utopia does not. And this one does, and the level to which it happens varies. And what happens here is, like, so again, most people I think will consider the overall signature of the 1266 to be U-shaped. Slightly U-shaped. Maybe a stronger elevation in the bass than in the upper treble. To my ear, in the vast majority of pad positions that I tried, it's a slight W. There's a little bit of an imbalance between the presence of the lower half of the mid-range range and the upper parts of the mid-range range. So if you think about a U-shaped signature that's more or less flat in the middle, for me, if we have, let's see, from your left to right, we'd have this elevated bass here, and it comes down into this flatness of the mid-range in the lower parts, but then it just ticks up a little bit, and then it flattens out again before it ramps back up again in the upper treble. The level to which that little hump in the middle is present changes for me based on pad position, but what I can never get to go away is a tonal imbalance between the lower parts of the mid-range range and the upper parts of the mid-range range, which throws off the balance between fundamental frequencies and upper harmonics for in like the second and third, or first and second harmonics of those fundamental frequencies, elevating those harmonics to a level above what they would be naturally. And so the mid-range timbre just gets off. It's just off for me. And so that's where I start to struggle with this headphone. So it's uncomfortable for me. Like, I don't think I mentioned this, but because of the system, like, it moves around on the head a lot. Like, just looking down to look at a piece of paper. Take these off a minute. Okay, but just looking down. Okay, I mean, other headphones don't do that to me near to the extent that this one does. So fit and comfort, and then when you add in that, it's just that the mid-range timbre is just off. It's off, right? Like some examples that I can think of, and it's off to a sometimes painful degree, unfortunately. Like, there were a couple of tracks that one of the new singles by the band War on Drugs is called "I Don't Live Here Anymore," and the opening guitar riff, when the electric guitar comes in, it hits right in a range where it's just searing and painful at my normal listening range between 70 and 75 decibel average, depending on how the mood strikes me that day. It's painful in that range. I just listened to a track this morning on this because I usually do one last listen or two before I shoot a video, just to make sure that what I'm about to say is what I want to say. And one of the tracks that came on was "This Song Is Over" by The Who. And similar thing, when that electric guitar comes in, it just hits right in that range where it's just, it became painful for me in that regard. So, yeah. Now, is it still worth $5,000? I mean, what it does in the bass is just absolutely incredible. I wish that I could have this level of bass performance on other headphones because, or on this headphone with mid-range a little bit more in check. I mean, and yes, I tried EQ on the mid-range. It helped a little. It did not cure that problem that I'm talking about. But I wish that I could carry this bass over to other headphones because, like, bass is just amazing. It's wonderful, and I'm a bass head, and I wish I could have it in other things, and it's just not there yet. So I think for a lot of electronic music, if you're into heavy EDM, if you're into dubstep, that sort of thing, where there's not an acoustic natural sound to most of the things that you are hearing, this one you're not going to beat it, right? It's like having a really high fidelity, very highly detailed dance club on your head. Okay. So for that, you're not going to beat it. But if you're listening to a lot of things with vocals in it, if you're listening to a lot of acoustic instruments, and that sort of thing, that's just where that mid-range weirdness just really gets in the way for me. And I read, that is a weakness discussed amongst the community, that like there's a bit of a scoop in that lower mids, and that just does throw things off through the mid-range, which to me is a bit of a turn-off at $5,000, right? It's a turn-off anywhere. It just becomes that much more so at $5,000, in my opinion. That said, like, still, the resolution is absolutely $5,000 worth of resolution. The Susvara might be just a hair more resolving and some of the finer micro detail things, but it's very close there. The Utopia is not as resolving as this yet, either. I mean, not a huge gap, but it's not. So, I mean, the resolution is appropriate for the price. Okay, the physicality, the punch, the slam. I have heard the Abyss Diana Phi before. I reviewed that in written form, which I can link to down below as well. This is more refined than the Diana Phi is. Like, it doesn't sound as aggressively forward in its detail presentation as the Phi does. But it's still there, like it's still very forward and aggressive in its resolution and in its detail retrieval, which to me sounds a little unnatural, but I know that some people really like it, but still a little bit more refined than the Phi. I mean, what else do I need to say about it? I mean, I think that fairly well covers it. Like, to the good side, the pad mounting system is really ingenious. I would like to see other headphone makers offer that level of tuning and control and just the simplicity of their pad mounting system that they have on this one. The bass is just absolutely killer in the best way possible. Love the bass on this headphone. Okay, that's in terms of quantity and quality and punch and slam and texture and detail and pitch definition and just all of that stuff. It's amazing in the bass. The overall resolution, also super high, worthy of the top of the line model, worthy of Summit Fi levels, okay, on that. Just for me, the combination of comfort and that just the strangeness of the mid-range timbre sounding very unnatural and to me at times shouty and aggressive to the point of painful would mean that I just would have a hard time justifying buying this for myself. But if you don't suffer from those problems and you love electronic music with lots of low-end energy and punch and slam and all of that, then this is probably your end game and you should absolutely check it out. Okay? So, yeah, I think I will leave it there. I am Wave Theory. This has been my review of the JPS Labs Abyss Dianify headphone. Stay tuned for my review of the Focal Utopia. And then I will do a video where I look at a comparison of the Susvara and the 1266 and the Utopia. And if you remember, I did the RAL SR1A recently as well. That's still around. I'll do a comparison video and do some thoughts on how all of those stack up against each other. So again, I am Wave Theory. Please like and subscribe to my channel. And as always, enjoy the music.